So we have read lots of historical fiction books, and now it's time to start writing your own historical fiction piece. You won't be writing your historical fiction piece today, or probably for the next couple of days. You probably won't start it until maybe Monday. Today's Thursday, maybe Tuesday, because there's going to be a lot of student pieces that I'm going to share with you that we're going to score, and we're going to look at their planning sheets. So we have a lot of work first to look at other students' samples so you can see really, get a good idea of what you want to do in your historical piece and what you don't want to do. Okay, so now let's take a look. Since you already have a good idea of what historical fiction is, because we've read a lot, this will help you. This overhead has the elements of historical fiction on it. So let's go through it. And you have it in front of you. Okay, so it's what is historical fiction? Well, the genre is historical fiction. That's the type of writing it is, and it's fiction, it's fake writing. Okay, the purpose is to entertain. When you go to write your historical fiction, you will be writing to entertain people. Here are the elements. Characters. All characters are fictional. However, they behave in realistic ways. In your planning sheet, which we'll look at in a minute, there are two characters that are not fictional, that are true characters. Christopher Columbus and George Washington will be two characters that you get to choose from. You'll have 8 different characters, and 2 of them are realistic. Even if the characters are fictional, pretend characters that you make up, they still behave in realistic ways, which means they have no magic. Characters are vividly described to paint a clear picture of the time period. So, for example, i.e., appearance, clothes, parent relations, brother-sister relations. Okay, so you'll hear in one of the stories a worker on the field wearing a suit. Well, that kind of talks about the time, because that's not something that somebody would wear. A slave owner wearing a suit in a field is something that would happen during that time. There will be another student piece where the little girl's wearing an apron. So her clothes helps you tell of the time period. Setting. Takes place in a particular time period of at least 25 or more years ago. Your historical fiction pieces are going to be from long time ago, and there'll be specific choices that you get to make that will definitely be more than 25 years ago. Okay, so the setting describes a historical place, gives the reader a look at daily life in an era different than today's era. Okay, chores, food, transportation. So no one in here will have cars or buses or airplanes in their historical piece. You may have horses, carriages, those kinds of things, because this takes place long time ago. Plot. The main characters are involved in a conflict or dilemma that is realistic for that period. Okay, some examples of historical fiction: The Courage of Sarah Noble, Little Women, The Sign of the Beaver, The Kay, many more, and like Jetty's Journey from Freedom. Some teachers only pick one genre for the students to write in. However, we still believe it is important to teach and do all of the genre writings listed. If this rule of teaching all genres is applied at every grade level, by 9th grade, students would have written a total of 30 different genre writings. This comprehensive practice would not only strengthen student writers, but also create more capable adult writers. It is important to note that the teaching and writing of a mystery and tall tale should already be done before moving to historical fiction. Historical fiction is saved as the last genre writing because it seems to be more challenging than writing a mystery or tall tale. Okay, so let's take a look now at your planning wheels for 5th grade historical fiction genre writing. This is the planning sheet. This is the pre-writing that you're going to use before you even begin writing. This is not the real writing here. This is the graphic organizer that's going to help you structure your paper so that you have the elements of historical fiction. So looking at this top box, everyone put their finger brackets like this and say beginning. This is where you're going to plan for the beginning of your writing. And in the beginning of your writing, you always write about the setting and the characters in the beginning of your story. And we'll go over these wheels in just a minute. Put your finger bracket like this and say middle. This is the box where you're going to plan for the middle of your writing. This is where you're going to plan for the conflict in your story. Put your finger like this and say end. And this is where you're going to plan for the end of your story, the end of your writing, your historical fiction piece. And then narrator we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, let's go back up to the beginning box here. And there are 8 slices here, 8 choices. And these choices are choose a time period in history. It says use social studies knowledge to pick an event from U.S. history eras 1 through 3. Picking the event will give you the setting and the date. These are different characters that you can choose from. You're going to be choosing one. And so we're going to use your social studies book, your History Alive book, to write down the page numbers so that when you go to choose your character, you can use those pages in your history book, your social studies book, to do some research before you even begin writing. Because historical fiction is different from other genres like the mystery and tall tale that you've written. It's different because it has to have some true facts in it from that time period. So looking at your History Alive book, don't do it yet, but there is a table of contents page which we've used before, and it looks like this. It says contents in red. I can't give you a page number because there's no page number at the bottom. But open up your History Alive book to this contents page, please. Do that right now. And of course you'll look at the beginning because table of contents are always at the beginning of the book. Don't worry about it. You can replace it if you want. Okay, so everyone here on the contents page? Now you're going to have to do some looking on these contents, on the table of contents page, because what we'll do is we'll find where each one of these is in the contents, and then we'll write down the page number. Okay, so let's start with this first one. This is the earliest date that you can choose. This is before 1492, when American Indians, Native Americans, when they were the first people in the United States, before the explorers. So before 1492, you can choose to be an American Indian character in the desert Southwest before explorers. So you can be an Indian chief, you can be a mother, you can be a little boy or a little girl or a husband, or so you can be a man, woman, a little boy or a little girl if you choose to be an American Indian. Okay, what page number starts talking about Native Americans in their land? What page number is that? Raise your hand when you find the page number. Joseph?
21 of 39.
Page 21, and it is page 21. So let's write page 21. Everyone do that with pencil on this little slice right here. Now you're right, Joseph, it will probably go to page 29 and even beyond page 29, but starting on page 21 is where if you choose to be a character that's American Indian, you would start your research on page 21. Okay, the next character that you could choose is you could choose to be Christopher Columbus, either on one of the ships or exploring the U.S., because this is Era 1, 1492. Or you could be a crew member on the ship or exploring the U.S. So what page starts talking about early explorers? It would be on this page. It's on the first table of contents page. Which page starts talking about early exploration? Al?
Pages 39 and 47.
Okay, let's look, turn to 30, actually turn to 47, and let's look for the word Christopher Columbus. Everyone turn to page 47 and look for Christopher Columbus.
Columbus.
And raise your hand when you find the page that talks about Christopher Columbus. Mackenzie? What page is that?
48.
Page 48. So everyone write down page 48. In this classroom, the students use their History Alive social studies textbook as a reference book for the setting time periods. Although you may not have this textbook for your class, you can have the students use the social studies textbook you have, the library, and or the internet as a resource to use once they choose their setting. Last one, a framer of the U.S. Constitution. Framer, remember, means the people who wrote the Constitution, who signed the Constitution. You could change history with your historical fiction. Instead of Benjamin Franklin, you could have Benjamina Franklin. You could have a woman in your historical fiction signing the Constitution. You know? So what page would that be, the Constitution? Bailey? 141, that's right. Right, page 141. Okay, so now we have the page numbers. Go ahead and close up your social studies book. And put your packets on top of your History Alive book. How many of you think you already might know what character you're going to choose? Raise your hand if you think you already know. Okay, and that's fine. You may change your mind when you start going back and rereading, starting on these page numbers. You might go, well, no, this might interest me more. So that's why keep an open mind at this point, because you're not even close to planning yet. So keep an open mind, because maybe you want to change your mind. And if you don't know yet, that's fine. Okay. Now, the next box here, it says choose two characters. Write realistic names and some adjectives describing your good and bad characters. Think about what these characters do in your narrative story. So you're going to have a hero and an anti-hero. Anti-hero just means the bad guy, the bad girl, the bad woman, the bad man, the person who is against the hero. Okay, that's all that means. Just like when you wrote your mysteries, you had a villain, right? The same idea there. Okay, look here in the middle. Write about the conflict in the middle of your story, and it says choose a conflict. What problem does your hero have to solve? The anti-hero makes it hard for your hero to solve. So there's always a problem in a story, and usually the problem happens in the middle, and that's where yours will happen. Don't write anything yet. Write about the resolution in the end of your story. Choose a resolution. Resolution means the same as solution. It says, how does your story end? How did your hero solve the problem? So to every problem, there is a solution. So you'll be coming up with a solution here at the end. And then this last one, pick a narrator. Who do you want to tell the story? Everyone write first right here and write third. Just like I did. Do that right now, Kayla. Okay. Now, it says, who do you want to tell the story? You have two choices here. You can either write in first person, which first person would be a story told from the main character's point of view. The words I, we, and me are used often. So if you chose to write your story in first person, you would be saying, I did this, I solved that, I couldn't believe my eyes, I signed the Constitution with great pride. You know, you will be writing it. You'll turn into that character. If you don't want to turn into the character and you don't want to write it as first person, you will be writing it as third person. Third person is told from the point of view of a narrator who knows all. Most novels are written from this point of view. The words he, she, they are used. Okay, that would be third person. In Jetty's Journey to Freedom, we can just see, if you open it up, if the words I are being used, then it's first person. But it's not. It says, but Jetty loves me being here with me. Don't you, Jetty? Lexi looked at Jetty hopefully. So this is the third person novel. Okay. As with all of the WriteSteps lessons, feel free to separate the lesson based on your schedule and student needs. However, it is important not to let a lot of time pass between each section of the lesson. The lesson you are watching has 4 main parts. They are: number 1, historical fiction definition sheet. 2, going over the planning sheet. 3, using the first student sample to teach how to fill out the planning sheet. 4, using the second student sample to show writing an already filled out planning sheet. You could separate the lesson so that each numbered step takes 1 class session to complete. Therefore, what you see in this lesson could be separated into 3 to 4 different days. Let's go to, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at DeQuan's historical fiction. Not anyone you know, okay, a student in another 5th grade class, and we're going to work backwards. What we'll do is, hold on a minute, don't turn yet. We're going to read his, I'm going to read it out loud, you're going to follow along, and then we're going to figure out how he filled out his planning sheet, because I didn't include his planning sheet. We're going to have to figure out how he filled it out, and that'll help you when you go to fill yours out on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. Okay, so turn to DeQuan's. It's called The Great Escape. As I read this and you're going to follow along, I want you to think of who the hero is, who the anti-hero is, what is the problem, what is the solution, and who's the narrator. Is it written in first or third person? Okay, follow along with your eyes, your finger, or your pencil. The Great Escape. A long time ago, there was a slave ship on its way back from Africa. On that ship, there was a young man named Sam. Sam was an African-American taller kid with a dark green torn shirt and shredded blue pants. He had no idea where he was or where he was going. All he knew was that he was on a ship sailing to somewhere. It almost seemed like it was made for Sam and his friends, Tom, John, and Jane. They had made their own history and would remember this day for the rest of their lives. Now, what we'll do tomorrow is we'll use the historical fiction rubric to score this paper. But right now, we're going to figure out how DeQuan filled out his planning sheet. So, one more thing that we're going to do too, so you know, is probably not tomorrow, Friday, but Monday, we're going to go through and we're going to underline, and each color for the 6 traits, we'll use a color for each one of the 6 traits, red for ideas, orange for organization, and we'll look at what DeQuan's strengths were in terms of the 6 traits. Okay, so now turn back to the planning sheet. What section of the wheel did DeQuan choose? Which page number? Courtney? 77? Is that what you said? Right, that's right. Slave from Africa trying to escape the plantation. The only problem is I can tell that DeQuan didn't do his research on page 77. Because era 2, 1607, the Underground Railroad didn't happen until way after 1787, after the American Revolution. Not way, it was close, but it didn't happen until over here. If he was to read page 77, he wouldn't read anything about the Underground Railroad. So he would have circled this, starred it. Don't do this on yours. He would have circled this and starred this on his own planning sheet. But the only problem is he wasn't within the correct time frame. So make sure and that's why it's important for you to do some research, because Underground Railroad didn't happen. Underground Railroad happened way after. So make sure that you are doing the research there, because people will be able to tell if you have incorrect historical facts. Okay, so he did do this character, slave from Africa. Now choose 2 characters. Who was his hero what would he have written for his hero, and who would he have written for his anti-hero? Who knows? There's a word in here that is not third person, because remember, third person, he, she, they are used, but first person is I, we, me. So what word in here does he switch over and use? Darren?
We stayed.
Oh, right here. Actually, yeah, don't do this. He wrote he, and then all of a sudden he switched to first person and said we. That you don't want to switch. That's a mistake. Don't do that. See, you can't use we and he. You can either write in first person or write in third person, and he switched. How many of you were confused when I read this and all of a sudden it was he, and then all of a sudden we stayed in the same clothes? How many of you were confused by that? I definitely was. I was like, what? Why? He switched tenses on us. Okay, so this is a learning lesson here. Two things that you're going to learn from Daquan here. This is a good piece of writing, but he didn't do his research because he used the Underground Railroad for this time period, which was this is way before Underground Railroad, and he switched. Generally though, which narrator did he use, first or third? Thumbs up if you think he mostly used first. Aye. Thumbs down if you think he mostly used third. Good, your thumbs should be down. He mostly used third, didn't he? Third person. So he would have circled this and starred this. This is to help you. I did this to help you, show you how you're going to fill out your planning sheet with whatever character you choose. Okay, now let's skip the next one and go right to Stacy's, because I told you we're going to look at several students' writing. So turn to Stacy's. Stacy's is this packet right here. Everyone turn to this one. We'll look at the other student pieces later on, probably tomorrow, Friday. Okay. Now you can probably tell just from the heaviness that Stacy's writing is pretty long here. She wrote a piece and it took her about 3 or 4 days to write this. And she went back and she edited and revised it too, which you'll see. Looking at her planning sheet, I'm bringing you now a filled out planning sheet. Her time period she chose, and please don't do what she did here. She kind of scribbled it all out. Instead, just circle it like she had originally and star it like that. You don't need to do all this, shade it, okay? So she chose American Indian, Desert Southwest before explorers. The reason why you're circling and starring is because I'm going to collect your planning sheets before you even begin writing to make sure that you have all the elements that you need to have on the planning sheet. Her two characters. Her hero is going to be Sasha, which means light of the moon. So there's a describing word there to describe Sasha. And she's a little Indian girl, 12, which is even a better adjective. She's little, she's an Indian girl, and she's 12. Little Bear also must be a hero. He's 10, and he's her brother. If you have 2 heroes, that's fine. Okay, but we just don't want you having a lot of characters because then it gets too complicated and too confusing. Since this is the first time writing historical fiction, try to stay simple here. Anti-hero, we have Fang, which is a bear, and Wolf Eye, which is an old, what's that word, do you think? Voodoo, old voodoo guy, evil. Okay, so there are some descriptive words for her writers writing with voice, aren't they? I tripped over something. Oh no! I had tripped over Little Bear. He was lying on the ground, holding his stomach and his chest tight. What's wrong? I asked. Sasha, he replied. As I looked closer, there was blood on the ground and claw marks all over Little Bear. Father! I yelled as I started to cry. Red Raven didn't respond. Suddenly, I saw a shadow in the fog, and I knew it wasn't my father. Beside me, I found an arrowhead on the ground that was left outside. I gripped it tightly in my hand. I turned around, and all I could see was Fang lunging out of the fog with his mouth open, his claws out. My reaction was to put my hand with this arrowhead out in front. Then it was over. I screamed and I screamed until I realized that Fang was dead. Both Fang and Little Bear lay beside me dead. I found my teepee and walked inside with blood on my clothes, and my father was getting well again. So he came over and hugged me. Thank you, he said. I felt relieved since the curse is broken. All was well in my village now. Wolf Eye was powerless without Fang, and our tribe was no longer sick. I was happy, even though two loved ones were gone. Little Bear and Yellow Petal will be remembered forever in my thoughts. Okay, so what do you think? Is this a pretty good piece of writing?
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell the student really worked hard at this and didn't rush through? Yes. So what we'll do on Monday is we'll go back to these two pieces of writing. We'll look at where they have 6 traits, and then we'll score them on the rubric. And then after hearing a couple more student pieces, then you'll start to be ready to fill out your own rubric and start your own writing, and then score yourself using that same rubric.
As with all sharing of student samples, it would be wise to go through a quick 6 traits, strengths and weaknesses lesson with each of the writing samples you share. The steps of this lesson can be found in your binder.